Football in Focus from Teed Up Indoors on Battleground Avenue, home of Davis Troxter, who's playing in the golf tournament today for charity. Good job by Davis out of Bryant Park playing golf today. Got Mike Fanning with us on the Grimsley Whirlies. And Mike, last week they beat Southeast. Was the score 56-0?
Correct.
Okay, glad I got that right.
You got that
because
right.
I know Northwest was victorious over Western 52-0. You guys 56-0. If you will, talk about some of the top players on offense in that big 56-0 win by Grimsley.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you know, before we get to the key players, I think, you know, last time we had talked, Grimsley was 3-0, getting ready to go into the bye week. Offense was clicking. I mean, 15 of 17 drives for them had resulted in touchdown drives. I mean, what were they going to do during the bye week to come out and look any more impressive than what we'd already seen? And guess what? They come out, no huddle, up tempo, and they proceed to go 7 for 7. Their first 7 drives of the game go for 7 touchdowns against Southeast. And I do want to put an asterisk behind these game and behind these stats. So many Southeast players were out.
Yeah, was
with
it still COVID?
It was a COVID-related issue.
He was out. Also, the top running back, McKinnon was out.
McKinnon was out. And when you take Ian McKinnon out of that offense from the tailback position, he's somebody who can catch a lot of balls out of the backfield. He's a tremendous runner inside. It's a very, very young football team. So when you lose one of your talented playmakers going into this contest and your starting quarterback, it was going to make for a long day. But those two guys didn't play defense. And what the Grimsley Whirlies offense did, like I said, 7 for 7, is just put up, just run away in the first half with that up-tempo, no-huddle offense. Really, Southeast had no answers.
Best thing for Grimsley in that game could have been the fact that they were able to get the backups in. Got some good playing time for them too. The backups.
Yeah, Brandon. Just checking my notes here. He went 14 of 17, 187 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he just played the first half. Same thing with Mitchell Summers. Summers only rushed it 7 times, ends up with 59 yards and 3 touchdowns. Terrell Anderson, another big night, catching the football, throw it up, huge catch radius for him, 5 catches for 111 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, you know, what would we see maybe different out of the Whirlies coming off the bye week that we hadn't seen in the first 3 games? Well, all of a sudden, up to that point, it kind of been no huddle, no hurry, kind of a check with me offense, more deliberate in the play calling. Then, of course, against Southeast, they break out another trick, up-tempo. I mean, just pedal to the metal, and they just drive it down the field and score it at will.
What I want to talk about, too, because it gets left out sometimes, it's a big thing this week, because I saw it on one of the web pages. This kid, Grant Buckram, made the East-West All-Stars team. He's been named the All-Star. Talk about that offensive line, because sometimes, and can you get some guys' names in from that offense? We got Buckram. We know he did well.
Yeah, Matier on the left side as well. You know, when we talked to Darryl Brown before the season, you know, kind of going through with him, you know, Darryl, what are some of the strengths, what are some of the weaknesses of this team? And even though they brought back good experience on the offensive line, they had to move some people around. Brock Weston was their only new starter. And, of course, as the center, he's somebody who's going to touch the football every single play. So it's important to have your center right. But he told me, he said before the season, you know, this offensive line's a little undersized. You know, it's maybe just a little bit of a question mark. Questions answered. This offensive line, yeah, you can look at the stats, a little undersized, not as tall as some of the other offensive lines you'll see around the state, but they play physical, and what they do is they run. The downfield blocking from the offensive line.
You look when you see those guys downfield blocking for the receivers, blocking for the running backs. They're downfield probably 10, 15 yards, getting the job done and keeping the play going, to extend that play.
That's exactly right. What they give up in size, they kept in mobility. So what you have is when you pull these tackles of the guards around and you get them to the second level, it's only going to make the run game even more powerful. And that's what we've seen through the first 4 games is these offensive linemen, they can get off, they can get to the second level, they can cover those linebackers up. 3-4 yard gains start going for 5, 7, 8 yards, you know.
Sounds like a good trade-off, too. I think I'd rather have the speed as opposed to the size, because the size is going to give you 3 to 5 yards, 7 yards. Those guys may be about giving out, but those guys who are smaller, who are a little bit quicker, they're going to give you extended plays further down the field, 10, 15 yards, sometimes 20. They may be, what I like to see somebody as a lineman run along beside that running back or that receiver after the play has been moved upfield. I like to see that lineman beside that guy as he goes to the end zone. That is really a nice sign.
And the pass protection has been outstanding as well. So when they've had to hold their ground and keep a pocket, Faison Brandon's had time to throw. So, I mean, the offensive line has extremely impressed me for somebody who, when you look at the numbers and you're like, 6'1", 200 pounds. Can somebody like that be effective on the offensive line? Grimsley's offensive line has proven it to me, and they play the offense into that. Like I said, pulling guys, getting them to the second level, giving Brandon and Summers time to move out of the pocket if the play breaks down and make a play with their legs.
I think you probably like to look at, go back and check up on. You look at the number of times maybe that face-on Brandon's been on the ground this year. Haven't been on the ground all that many times this season, which is a good thing too. Maybe less than 10 times, maybe being on the ground. Those linemen are letting that guy to stand up and be erect and get the job done.
Anytime you reconstruct an offensive line over the offseason, and you get new guys playing together in new positions, you think false starts. You think of your protection coverages, right? And the Whirlies are running a very complicated offense right now. You got guys in motion, you got a lot of pre-snap movement, but the offensive line has been just a pillar so far. And like I said, they've used what we thought was a deficiency to their advantage, getting to the second level, covering guys up. They've held strong in the pass protection game, and it shows. I mean, 7 for 7 in the first half, running clock in the second half.
Who's the offensive coordinator? Coach Brown, he's the head coach, deserves a lot of credit, but who's the offensive coordinator we got to talk about? Who's getting a job done there?
Rigsby doing Joe Rigsby doing an excellent job. And like I said, did I know exactly what they were going to come out after the break and after the bye week rather, and what the offense was going to look like, how they were going to tweak it? I wasn't expecting up tempo. I wasn't expecting no huddle, run, go, go, go. No longer, the look at me, the checkovers, and anything like that. They just moved the football down the field, and with a lot of speed, and that's going to be something to watch as the season goes on.
It's probably a good thing too, because if you weren't expecting that, that means a lot of the opposition may not expect it too. So Coach Brown really came in that element of surprise, and he was prepared with that.
We were thinking more end arounds, more crossing routes. We've seen
guys like that running for the wide side of the field, one side or the other. Yeah.
Taking advantage of people being in motion. We kind of thought coming out of the first 3 weeks, how else could they get? They got so many playmakers. How do you give everybody a turn with the football?
Gotta try to keep them happy.
So touch passes, end arounds, more bubble screens. Instead, we saw tempo coming out of the bye week. I think it's going to be here to stay, and it puts a lot of pressure on a young secondary to get there, because this Grimsley Whirlies offense is set up to take the top off. I mean, you got a quarterback with a huge arm. You got wide receivers with huge catch radiuses. Throw it deep, let them go make plays. So if the offensive line gives that little bit of protection, I mean, it's a scary sight.
Well, I'm sure you'll be watching that game close, as you'll be on top of it tomorrow night. What about these guys you're looking out for? Tanner Ballou at quarterback, Trent Cloud at wide receiver, Northwest Guilford players, two of their top guys on the team. I know Grimsley, I know the people following the game like yourself, tracking that game, going to be watching those guys extremely close.
Yeah, I think now that we're getting a little bit farther into the season, we're getting an idea of what teams do well and what they don't do well. We understand the trends. Even looking at film, like I said, the Whirlies coming out with the no huddle and the up-tempo look, weren't expecting that. That wasn't on film. But now through 4 weeks, you're really starting to see what you have going. And what I like about Northwest, I think why they can hang around in this ballgame, is their defense has created 8 turnovers on the season. And if the Whirlies, you got a sophomore quarterback, 15-year-old quarterback in Faison Brandon. Can you speed him up? Can you take advantage of that offensive line? Can you get in his face, make him hurry decisions? Can you keep feeding into that turnover machine you have working on defense for Northwest? On offense, they have a lot more experience at the quarterback and the running position than we've seen some of the teams the Whirlies have played up until this point.
See, one good thing about that, I think is going to be good to Grimsley's advantage in going to this game, the fact they played tough competition early. It wasn't like a cream puff or cupcake schedule early in this. They play tougher teams. It's going to be better prepared for this game and the conference schedule they're facing right now.
It's something I wrote about in my articles. 4 different teams have thrown out 4 different defensive packages to try to slow the Whirlies down. None of them worked. Reagan, they put everybody on the line of scrimmage. No safeties, no help over the top. They lined everybody up. They made the Whirlies decide who was coming and who was dropping. Southeast, on the other hand, they dropped everybody back. They played a four nickel look. They played a ton of coverage, trying to take away the deep shot, trying to at least make the Whirlies make plays. So if you're Grimsley and you're on offense, you've seen a lot of different defensive looks. And like I said, now we're getting these tendencies. What can they possibly do on defense that the Whirlies haven't already seen to try to generate some turnovers?
I think about Grimsley too with this game. Grimsley's going to be looking at some film of all the games Northwest played. The first game Northwest lost to Burlington Williams.
Yeah.
Williams had the quarterback Dan Mahan that gave him problems. So Faison Brandon may give him some problems too. So that's maybe Grimsley's advantage. The problems Northwest had against Mahan back in that first game, because he was really active. Helped Williams win that ball game.
Yeah, I think another trend we've seen, something we've talked about on this show before and written about, is Grimsley has made a tremendous job of making second half adjustments. And they've taken the game plan from the first half and they've changed it up. They've made the adjustments in the second half, and that's where they've pulled away. It wasn't a factor in this last game because of the running clock. They had already built up the 49-0 lead. But in the first 3 games, we saw those teams hang around. We saw Reagan, we saw Roseville, we saw Mount Tabor kind of hang around. And then after halftime, Grimsley had recognized the adjustments that needed to be made. They made them on the offensive and defensive side, and they ran away from those games. So if you're Northwest, you got to have a game plan for the first half, and then you have to properly make those adjustments.
You better be ready at halftime.
Yes, exactly right.
That board. You better on that board quick at halftime. Get those changes made.
Exactly right. You need to go to your team at halftime and says, we cannot stay still. We have to make adjustments. If we're only down a score or 2, we have to come out and show them something different. We can't just keep doing what we were doing in the first half. Grimsley's too good. They're going to make adjustments, and they're going to play better in the second half, and we've seen that.
What about Bryce Davis? You mentioned a couple weeks he missed a game or 2, missed some time. Is he back now regular? What was wrong with him? Did you ever find out?
Well, it looked like he had a little bit of a medical injury with his knee. At least that's what the coaches had told us.
Right.
We've seen him at practice, supporting his teammates, and
He's back in there now?
Yeah, well. At least moving around, we'll see. Game time decisions. Last I heard, so they're going to take it. They're going to take it easy with him right now. They can, because Eason, the other defensive end, Jacoby Eason, has been playing just. You got Thatcher on the defensive line too. The defensive line without Davis has still given teams fits.
Plus
the linebacking core
too. We mentioned
you got Hill. They're just the big old dude, right? Huge. I mean, he's taking on double teams all game long.
Plus, Hill's got a brother too coming along on the Kaiser team. Saw him in the game yesterday. Hill's brother probably dominated that game as much as anybody against Guilford Middle yesterday. So these young linemen Grim's been bringing in. You had Hill, before him you had Travis Shaw, before that you had DJ Reader. There's another one coming too. They've got them coming all over the place.
The Grimsley secondary with Jamari Davis and Fred Sellers, they have a ton of experience on the back end. The linebacking core is what's taking shape, and it's getting better. I mean, you can watch it. It's getting better week after week.
And this one kid you mentioned, another Davis, is it Amari Davis back there? Where's Amari Davis at?
Yeah, he's in the secondary as well.
He also was named to that East-West All-Stars team as well, from what I read today earlier.
Yeah. So, I mean, they have a ton of talent on defense. They've given up some big chunk plays to Roseville. They obviously took care of business last week with the 56-0 win. Can Northwest rely on a little bit of experience, maybe take advantage of some turnovers and some short fields on offense? What can the Vikings do to kind of disrupt what this role that Grimsley's been on here in the first 4 games?
Kind of coming to a quick close. What about the backup for Mitchell Summers? Who is his backup? So when he sits down, who comes in? Who backs up Summers?
Well, they've been playing a Crawford. He's come in a little bit. I mean, it's kind of a running back by committee situation if he's not in the game. I think it's still a little bit to be decided because just like backing up Faison Brandon, it's a bunch of sophomores, a bunch of JV guys backing up these starters right now. This Grimsley team, outside of a couple of these wide receivers, is still a young team.
Yeah.
Andy, I mean, they're not going anywhere. There's too many sophomores and juniors on this team.
The fact of coaching these guys up and bringing them along now, these young players.
Absolutely. And what new wrinkles will we see on offense? We talked about up-tempo this week. So the Vikings are going to have their hands full. I think they're up to the challenge because they got the experience. Can they get the turnovers? Can they get the short fields? It's high school football.
Right. I think this Northwest game will be interesting because Grimsley, this is the big one for them right now, the big one they're pointing to, the conference, probably the closest conference competition. But the game this week is big, but I think even bigger maybe than this week's game. Don't look ahead too far, but the following week is going to really be big for Grimsley because they put all this focus on this game this week. After this game this week, next week's game going to be huge because there could be that potential for a letdown that week. That's what I'm thinking about right now.
When I talk to the Grimsley players, whether it's after practice or after the game, they know every game's big because the opponents have all circled it.
Oh yeah.
So you talk about letdown games.
They've been doing that now the past couple of years.
Yeah, you talk about letdown games. You talk about some games meaning more, than other games. I think the Grimsley players recognize there is a target on their back. You have to bring it every single week. Will there be highs and lows? Of course, but I don't think anybody's sneaking up from a Grimsley world, I don't think any team's sneaking up on them.
And that
they are
comes
taking
down to
every opponent
coaches, too,
seriously.
making sure those guys are aware of that. And you got to continue to remind them about that, because sometimes the kids can let down a little bit. The coaches got to remind them about this. Let them know somebody's laying in the weeds waiting on you guys, so you better be aware of what's going on at all times.
High school football, injuries, turnovers, those things happen. We talked about illness last week. You know, COVID going through these schools. Imagine what it does to these locker rooms too. So we saw Southeast, you know, have just a ton of guys lost to illness. It can happen to any one of these schools as we go through this season. Maybe
spread pretty quick.
It can, and you got players out with illness, or even if they're trying to play with not feeling well, they're not 100%. So, you know.
What about this? Changing the subject a bit, because you've got that well covered here. You're going to cover it more for us tomorrow night after the
absolutely.
game.
Looking forward to it.
What about prime time? Does he live to win again this week when he goes to Oregon? Prime time and the Colorado Buffaloes.
Of course, we were talking about prime time last time I was on show. Obviously, the biggest thing going. Dion, is that his name?
That's it. Yeah,
Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
I think their offense needs to mature a little bit, especially with some key injuries they have. You know, Colorado State, kind of a bottom-tier team, was able to hang around by some of the things they were doing on offense. So Colorado, to win this game, is going to have to come up with some answers on defense to slow down this passing attack for Oregon. So, you know, I think the line right now, I mean, a lot of people are really favoring Oregon. I think it'll be closer because, you know, high school, college football, there's a lot of emotion got to be taken into account, and momentum taken into account on how these games play out. Dion, he brings that swagger. You know, so I imagine primetimes guys, they're going to be pumped up. They're going to be feeding off that emotion. Sometimes they can be an extra player out in the field.
What about the Panthers closing out with them, NFL? How many games did we quit asking people what the record's going to be? Forget that. Now, how many games are they going to win this year, Panthers?
How many are they going to win?
Yeah, how many will they win this year? What's the unfortunate,
well,
the unlucky or the lucky number?
Again, playing a decent Saints team.
Yeah.
You're asking the defense to do a lot, and they have. They've been up to the challenge.
They've been on the field
because,
a lot.
by the way, Atlanta's better than I think we thought.
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
So Atlanta, you know, no shame in that. Saints are going to, you know, play them hard. You ask the defense to do a lot. What can the offense generate moving forward to get you over 5 wins? Maybe get you to 6 wins.
Get to 5 or 6.
I think once. Now we're going to check on the Bryce Davis injury.
He's out from what we hear now. Definitely out.
Is we hear? Okay, because I know he's been
Sunday.
nursing that ankle.
Andy
injury.
Dalton, the redhead, takes over.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, as he develops a little bit more, we got to get this running game a little bit more developed if you're going to get to 5-6 wins. You know, that's kind of where I had them. I figured tight ends were going to be more involved than what they are. It's just coming together. It's just going to be slow, and I think, you know, this is part of breaking in a new quarterback. Out of the other rookie quarterbacks, I think he's looked like one of the better ones.
Yeah, among the potential draft picks for the Panthers at quarterback, he probably has been one of the better ones so far. As we close, how excited are you about the game tomorrow night with Northwest and Grimsley? How excited are you?
I am. I am excited because as opposed to both Reagan and then Southeast, Northwest has the experience. It's on the road. You know, if you're the Whirlies, it's on the road, so you can have a nice, you know,
and you know how much
environment.
There's not much seating there either. Grimsley fans be aware the seating is very limited at Northwest, very limited.
Yeah, and Grimsley's been traveling well this year, so I think it's an intimate. It's going to be a nice setting for football. It's cooling down outside. It kind of feels like football weather now. At least it did last Friday night. So again, let's let things play out. 7 for 7. I think they went 9 for 9 overall, the Whirlies did, in scoring possessions last week. Northwest has got to figure out a way to get this offense off the field because the top 3 defenses going into the start of the season, the non-conference, those top 3 seasoned aggressive defenses couldn't slow the Whirlies down. Southeast couldn't slow the Whirlies down. What can Northwest do that they couldn't? So
Mike Fanning can't slow him down. We got to stop him though. Our time is done for this week. Mike, thank you as always. Good job this week.
Like the site too. I'm going to miss the green, but I like the refresher.
It's all in black and white now. Strictly black and white. You got it. Thank you, Mike.